It was a city like no other. Baghdad, the jewel of the Islamic world, stood as the Qibla, the direction toward which humanity's intellectual and cultural compass turned. Its libraries brimmed with treasures, the mathematics of al-Khwarizmi, the medicine of al-Razi, the philosophy of al-Farabi. It was a city where the stars were not just gazed at, they were mapped, named, and understood. But history is cruel, and even the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. Beneath the grandeur of Baghdad's domes and the scholarly debates in its markets, a storm had been gathering. A storm that would not just shake its foundations, but obliterate them entirely. Now, imagine this. A rider approaches the gates of the city. He carries no words of peace, no treaties of alliance. Instead, his message is chilling in its simplicity: submit or die. Behind him, an army unlike any the world had seen. The Mongols. Warriors forged by the unforgiving steppes, masters of speed, strategy, and slaughter. They were more than conquerors. They were harbingers of annihilation. Who could stop them? By the time the Mongols reached Baghdad in January of 1258, their legend was already written in blood and ash. Kingdoms had fallen. Cities had vanished. To defy them was to invite doom. And yet, Baghdad resisted. For 40 days, the Mongols laid siege to the city. Siege engines hurled stones the size of boulders. Arrows rained like deadly whispers. Inside, the once vibrant streets of Baghdad fell silent, its people trapped in fear and hunger. And then, the walls gave way. What followed was not warfare. It was a massacre. Entire families wiped out. Scholars executed in front of their libraries. The great Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, burned until its treasures turned to ash. The Tigris, which had once reflected the golden domes of the city, ran black with ink and red with blood. This was more than the fall of a city. It was the destruction of a civilization's soul. The Mongols did not simply conquer Baghdad, they unmade it. Its knowledge, its culture, its people, all erased in an act of brutality that the world has struggled to comprehend for centuries. But why? Why destroy what could have been absorbed? Was it revenge for an insult long forgotten? A declaration of dominance so absolute it left no room for memory? Or was it the inevitable collapse of a world too confident in its own permanence? The Siege of Baghdad was not just an ending. It was a warning, a reminder that even the mightiest achievements of humanity, its wisdom, its culture, its very existence, are as fragile as the parchment of a forgotten manuscript. In the year 1258, Baghdad stood as the pinnacle of human achievement, a city so radiant, so advanced, it seemed untouchable. Its libraries contained the wisdom of millennia, its scholars were revered across continents, and its streets buzzed with the vibrant exchange of ideas, trade, and art. It was the Qibla of knowledge, the heart of the Islamic Golden Age. But history has a cruel way of reminding us that no light, no matter how brilliant, is safe from the shadows. By February of that year, Baghdad was reduced to ash and silence. The city's streets, once alive with poetry and debate, became rivers of blood. The Tigris River, once a source of life, turned black with ink from burned manuscripts and red with the lives lost in one of history's darkest chapters. How did this happen? How did the Mongols, a nomadic force born in the harsh steppes of Central Asia, bring one of the world's greatest civilizations to its knees? This is the story of ambition, betrayal, and the devastating cost of hubris. This is the Siege of Baghdad. The fall of Baghdad wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of a deliberate and ruthless strategy. Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, was a man driven by both ambition and duty. He had been ordered by his brother, the great Khan monk, to conquer the Islamic world and secure Mongol dominance over the Middle East. But Baghdad wasn't just a strategic target. It was a symbol. For over 500 years, it had been the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate, the spiritual and intellectual center of the Islamic world. Its libraries housed the works of Aristotle, Avicenna, and al-Khwarizmi. Its scholars had illuminated the world with advancements in medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. By the 13th century, however, the Abbasid Caliphate was a shadow of its former glory. Decades of internal conflict and political fragmentation had left it vulnerable. Caliph al-Mustasim, the ruler of Baghdad, underestimated the Mongols, dismissing their ultimatum to surrender as empty bravado. That arrogance would seal the city's fate. Hulagu Khan, he was a master strategist. His army of over 100,000 soldiers was a fearsome combination of seasoned Mongol warriors and forced Christian allies from Armenia and Georgia. The Mongols came prepared. They brought with them advanced siege technology, massive catapults capable of launching stones that could shatter the strongest walls, and incendiary weapons to spread chaos and fire. They encircled the city completely, cutting off all supplies and escape routes. On January 29, 1258, the assault began. The Mongols unleashed a relentless barrage of stones and fire. The walls of Baghdad trembled under the onslaught, but the defenders, soldiers and civilians alike, fought back with desperate courage. They poured boiling oil on the invaders, fired arrows from the ramparts, and resisted every advance. But the Mongols were patient. Each day, they pushed closer, their siege engines reducing the city's defenses to rubble. Starvation and panic gripped the people of Baghdad as the inevitable loomed closer. On February 10th, the walls of Baghdad crumbled, and the Mongols poured in. What followed was not warfare, it was annihilation. Hulagu Khan gave no quarter, ordering his army to slaughter the population without mercy. The killing lasted for days. Entire families were wiped out. Streets were littered with corpses. The Caliph himself, a man who had once ruled over the most enlightened city in the world, was executed in a brutal and humiliating manner. The House of Wisdom, the most important library in the world, was ransacked and burned. Priceless manuscripts, works that contained the accumulated knowledge of centuries, were thrown into the Tigris River. Witnesses claimed the river ran black with ink for days, a grim testament to the cultural genocide that had occurred. By the time the Mongols left, Baghdad was a ghost city. Of its population, estimated to be nearly 1 million before the siege, only a handful survived. The fall of Baghdad marked the end of an era. The Islamic Golden Age, which had illuminated the world for centuries, came to a crashing halt. The Abbasid Caliphate, already weakened, was effectively destroyed, leaving the Islamic world fragmented and leaderless. The loss of Baghdad's libraries set humanity back by centuries. Knowledge that could have revolutionized the sciences, medicine, and philosophy was lost forever. And the psychological impact of the siege was just as devastating. The Islamic world, once a hub of progress and innovation, was left reeling in the aftermath of this catastrophe. Today, the Siege of Baghdad is remembered as one of the darkest chapters in human history, a stark reminder of the fragility of even the greatest civilizations. It is a story of ambition unchecked, of hubris unchallenged, and of the devastating cost of war. But it is also a story that holds lessons for us. The fall of Baghdad reminds us that no empire is invincible, that knowledge and culture must be protected, and that arrogance can lead even the mightiest to ruin. Baghdad, it was a symbol of what humanity could achieve. Its destruction was a tragedy not just for the Islamic world, but for all of us. Let us remember it, not as a story of defeat, but as a warning of what we stand to lose if we fail to protect what matters most.